Welcome to the Savvy Leader Podcast. We're so excited to have you here. This is the perfect place for leadership growth, learning, and inspiration. Let's get started. In this week's episode, I am so excited to have Frank Spevak here with us. He has been making some waves in his community with some of his new ventures, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and share with you just exactly what he's been working on. And I can't wait for you to hear about it. All right, Frank, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Please tell us about yourself and this new venture that you're working on.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate this opportunity. I have been around for a while, as you can see that I am one of those gray hair, or as we say in the motorcycle community, a chrome-colored individual. And over the last several years, I've been working as a consultant and business coach. And in the process of doing that, I'm also writing articles in support of what I'm doing, writing up articles about things that have happened in my past, business life, and business adventures, also working on volunteer nonprofit organizations. So I've created a book that I'm calling The MBA You Should Get but won't, um, because it's the MBA that because I have an MBA from St. Thomas University, great school, great courses, and everything like that. But MBA courses, and much like regular business courses, tend to talk about theory, very nice, clean examples, um, issues that can be easily talked about and defined and answered. When in reality, life as a business owner is uh, getting an extra cup of coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to keep your
Mm-hmm.
energy going, to finish off your books and your meetings and your sales and all that kind of stuff till the end of the day. Having to make decisions that you weren't necessarily trained for. And so I decided to take this approach and create this book it's geared for anyone, but primarily for service contractors, those who
Hmm.
are um, in the trades, heating and ventilating, electric, plumbing, builders, remodelers. Um, and I've been working with a lot of those types of companies and business owners for a number of years now. So I thought this would be a great way to um, expand the idea of continuous learning without necessarily having to get uh, all caught up in a lot of money and time in a business school.
Hmm. Well, I can say firsthand that upon first perusing of this book, I found so much good stuff in there. And as a person who, worked right out of school and worked her way up, just through sheer grit and tenacity and skills, on my own, having something like this would have been invaluable to me then. And then as a entrepreneur, it would have been it's just so, I think it would have been such a great guidebook or handbook to just refer to. Because to your point, when you work with a lot of trades or when you're working out in the industry, you gain incredible experience and insight. And trades right now are in such demand. However, for whatever reason, there are many different reasons why people aren't able to or simply don't attend a college and attain these degrees that seem to stop us out a little bit throughout our career journey. So to hear you put together this powerful contrast between a traditional MBA and then real world experience, it's it's so great. And like I said, I wish you had thought of it 10 years ago. But that's okay. It's here now for everybody and me included. So tell me, what is the most significant or practical skill or even mindset that formal education often misses? And how do you talk about this or address this in your book?
Well, the very first chapter is on decision making, and it really sets up the rest of the book and really should set up the rest of the business owner's life. It's making good decisions faster, um, and trying to understand that every decision is not going to be correct. The
Mm.
idea that you're going to wait for a time when things are just right to make a decision is a complete fallacy. It doesn't exist. Um, my over my career, I've been through probably four recessions, four major stock market bubbles, um, in addition to all the minor stuff that happens as well. And now, with all of the things that are taking place, it's difficult to say when to make the right decision. And the answer is make it right now. Just do it.
Oh. Mm.
And the one of the best examples is Jeff Bezos. In one of his shareholder letters a few years ago, he talked about how he went around making decisions. And in his business, his particular business, that being able to have 70% of what they thought was the full amount of information they needed to make a decision was enough. Because when
Mhm.
you go chasing after that last 30%, you could be chasing it for weeks, months, years. It could be costing you more and more money. If you've got enough reasonable amount of material, make the decision. And if you fail, then you've learned. One of the things that's kind of overlooked is that that's how we as humans learn. We learn
Mhm.
by making mistakes. We know, no, I'm not going to do that again. So there's no shame in it. There's no wrong in making that type of thing. You might feel bad that you made a decision that way, but we've all made them. Um, Own it and get on with it. So for me, that the very first chapter on decision making sets up the rest of the book for all of the different aspects that a lot of small business owners are going to be encountering throughout their normal workday, work month, work year, work life.
Yeah. And that is so profound. I think, when you're already feeling vulnerable and maybe a little bit fragile as a new business owner, you're probably hoping not to make mistakes because, well, there's a good chance that you may not have a ton of money in the bank right now to cover that, right? Or you're worried about the future because this is a brand new budding thing. So finances certainly come into play with that. But I love that. I love that it's okay to give ourselves grace. I know that was actually a pretty tough lesson for me to learn. I can't even say I'm still good at like letting, that failure thing. What? Where?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one guy that I learned from, a guy named Paul Martinelli. He started a cleaning business in the Philadelphia area, grew to be a huge business. But one of the things that he um, decided to have was failure meetings. So
Oh.
he would get his whole staff together, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be. And the point of it was what happened to you, explain it, talk about it, and what did you do to fix it? And everybody had to say something. So they kept a log of all these failures. So it was when I first heard that several years ago, I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing.
Mm.
And if you look around, I'm not sure if they're still around, but there was a group that uh, was basically called the effed up group. The In order to be part of the group, you had to explain how you really effed up in your business.
Oh.
And so it's an interesting thing to understand. And we all like success stories. We like the Horatio Algers of the world, and we like the Jeff Bezos and
Hmm.
um, uh, Microsoft and all the things that are great, but they made mistakes. They all
Hmm.
made mistakes, and it's
Hmm.
the process of learning it. What did you learn from that mistake? Moving on, and just keep um, going on the course that you want to continue on. Yes, life happens. We're in a period right now where um, we have supply chain issues, we have tariffs, um, but it shouldn't de- de- detract from the fact that you need to continue on with your business.
Hmm.
So drink it all in and plot your course and just head out.
Well, and what a culture to have that kind of acceptance of failure. I think that that is just a hugely powerful thing in any setting. And you're right. I mean, we all want to be success. We want to be that success story. We all want to be the next, Jeff Bezos or Sarah Blakely, let's say. And so it's hard to see that, you don't focus on their failures. You probably don't even know what that many of them are. I feel like I should maybe AI that how many average fail or what's the average number of failures any superstar has had. That might be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a lot of failures and that happen, and we learn from them, and a lot of them are the tech bubble from a bunch of years ago, the whole scare with the Y2K bug and things like that. All they're all lessons if we decide to embrace them as lessons
Hmm.
instead of saying "woe is me."
Yeah. So important. Okay. So you also talk about something that I love, which is your big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yeah.
That's such a fun one. You're going to get baggy with it. All right. So, for a small business owner who's used to setting achievable incremental goals, what would be their first step then? I mean, as you're talking about accepting your failures and we look at goals, how do they set up big goals? I mean, first they accept that they might not reach them, or how should they go about doing that then?
Well, I come from a belief that um, a budget is a guideline. If
Hmm.
you missed it, it was a guess. Thinking of it as a guess, first off, this is where I think things will be. And then owning up to the fact that, well, my guess was wrong. So, instead of the 10% I projected, we're only going to have five. Okay, start looking at that. But the idea of the whole idea of SMART goals, and that's been around for a long, long time.
Hmm.
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound is what the SMART goal is.
Hmm.
Uh, I believe you should probably take out the A and the R,
Mm.
achievable and realistic, and is it specific, measurable, and time bound? Keep those parts.
Mm.
But the idea of a company that has had an 8% growth every year for the last 5 years and decides that we're going to do our goal is 8% again next year,
Mm.
that's not a goal. That is just inertia. You're already there. That's not anything that you're going to really impress anybody by.
Mm.
So, oh, we made our goal that we've made for the last 5 years. That's not that's not a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Hmm.
So Jim Collins, a number of years ago, wrote a book, Built to Last, and in there he talks about the big, hairy, audacious goals. So the big, hairy, audacious goal is something that's much more long term, something
Okay.
that is um, 3 to 5 or 7 or 8 years away, and it's basically looking at what do I envision for my business? What have I thought it was going to be? Am I going to have 1 million customers or 100,000 customers? What am I going to have in the future? and make that a real goal. So if a contractor in the heating and ventilating business is doing $500,000 a year, is it unrealistic for them to try and get $2.5 million next year?
Mm,
Might be. That's a tough climb. But if you set yourself up for that, okay, I'm going to go for 2.5 million. What do I need to do to set myself up for that success? And it becomes a mindset change. You're not just concentrating on the minimal increase and making a few extra sales. You have to think about, how can I make major change? And so
mm,
it may not happen immediately, and that's okay, but you work towards that. How can I make that happen? And you think differently when you have this really big goal staring you in the face. And it needs to stare you in the face. You need to put it up there and plaster it and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is where we are going to go. And then you got to get the buy-in from all of your employees, and make sure that they understand why, how, where,
mm,
what all is going on.
mm. Well, and then that leads us right into the clarity piece. I went through this myself recently too with some rebranding, and recognized that I was literally being too creative and not clear enough. Um, Talk a little bit about how that ties in. So, I mean, so first we've got the little bit of fear, and now we've got the, great big goals, which can also be a little bit scary. How do you create this kind of clarity with yourself in your mindset and then with your team? And then how do you articulate that to your audience?
Clarity to me comes from editing,
Mm,
rewriting. How can you say it in a much more simpler statement? What can you do to uh, explain what your business is in maybe a tagline, a little bit more than a tagline? We talk about the 30-second commercial, which is great, but um, how do you envision your business? Simplify, simplify, simplify.
mm,
So, continuing on with the example of a heating and ventilating contractor, uh, most will work on any home, any building, whatever it needs to be a successful contractor, and that they're making sales and making profit and things like that. But if they were to think differently about their vision and clarify the fact that, I actually work with homeowners who are extremely energy conscious, and they want to do everything they can to make their home as comfortable and efficient as possible. Instead of saying, well, I fix all HVAC systems for everywhere from Andover to Rochester, uh, simplify it and concentrate on those that are there. Clarify in your mind what it is that you're selling and who you're selling to. And I see so many things where this creativity, you know, we have so many AI capabilities now that the creative stuff is just phenomenal. It's magnificent, um, and this at the same time ridiculous, because we want to have this nice, big, beautiful, all this great stuff, and we lose the message of what it is that we're trying to sell, promote, and do. So concentrate on clarity, what it is that you're doing, where do you want to go, edit, 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 edit.
wow. And I can, like I said, say firsthand that having that clear message, and getting it in front of your ideal audience is always the best way to go. So again, so important to be clear before you get to be too creative. Definitely. With that, you talked a little bit about team and getting your buy-in from the team, and that plays into your chapter 2 conversation about culture. Um, So you've got high culture and low performance. You've got a box that you put together, and talk a little bit about the very first action a leader could take to inject that urgency and accountability without destroying morale, so you get that optimum performance.
Yeah. This is the whole idea of culture and how it works for or against your business, um, has played out in my life a lot. Um, the fun side of that is I'm a Chicago Bears fan.
Mhm.
We have won only one Super Bowl, 1985, and we hang on to that with dear life. I'm also a Cubs fan. It's been 108 years since getting a World Series. So it's the kind of thing where when you hear the coach talk about how great the culture is in the locker room, as one of the Chicago Bears coaches did a few years ago, um, talked about how everybody got along and um, they knew what they were supposed to be doing. Uh, and they had this really great culture. And he actually said they have a great culture. The problem was they were 2-14.
Mm.
They were terrible. So to me, you can have this really great culture, but if you don't mix it with performance, it's just a mutual admiration society. Um, and our businesses aren't that zero sum game like a professional sports game might be, but um, we have to have a culture of supporting all the members of the staff. Uh, we have to have a culture of inclusion, meaning they're all part of the decision making process. They're
Mm.
all part of uh, being in the vision. They understand where the vision is, where the owner wants to go. And a lot of times the owner says, well, this is my company. Why do they need to know that? One of the things about that we've learned recently about why employees stay with companies or they leave is they don't have a connection. If they don't have a connection with the owner or the mission of the company, they leave.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that they can buy in with uh, your vision, your culture, how you want to move your company forward, the chances are you're going to retain those employees more. So the whole idea of culture is important. There's the other end of the culture where you have all these super high performers, um, or maybe that star performer.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a toxic atmosphere
Mm.
because you have one person who is crushing it. Well, most of the time, um, and Simon Sinek said it a few years ago in one of his videos. He said he asked a high performing team who is the most who is the best person in your team, and they all pointed to this one individual. And then he said, who is the most toxic of your team? And they pointed to the exact same person.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be the part where culture, um, having that person out there, can really hurt the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So culture starts from the idea of the owner. It's not a grassroots thing. It starts from the owner.
Mm.
It continues on with who you hire, who you promote, why you promote. Um, I always firmly believe that as long as someone has the basic talents, you can teach them the rest of the stuff. That if they don't fit culturally in your organization, it's a nightmare. I don't know how many employees I've had to fire over the years that I thought would be a good fit. And then within a couple of months, realizing, yeah, they know their stuff, but boy, this is not helping us. And
Mm.
just had to fire them for the good of the organization, for the good of them, and for good of us.
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit, because I would as a business owner, you bring somebody on board, and like you just said, you're excited about them. You think they're going to be, your next rock star, and then they don't disappoint. They turn into the next rock star, and they either have the highest sales success or client success, or whatever the case may be, whatever their MO is. And in turn, that person also then, you know, is and can be the most toxic in the environment because of how the rest of the team responds to their success. How, as a leader, would you recommend someone handle that? How do you address that to maybe hold on to this success that you have? You don't want to lose that, but you don't want to sacrifice the team either. How do you address that?
Well, in addressing that is figuring out where your own values are.
Mm,
Does this person, yes, they may be adding sales, but they're crushing everything else.
mm,
Um, and so it's in the organizations I've been with, it's not worth keeping that person. If they're going to be successful, they're going to be successful wherever they go. I'll take the hit.
mm.
I'll take the hit. We're going to get some of that business anyways. So
Okay.
I'll just take the hit because I'm keeping, if I have a staff of 10 and one's a jerk, I want to keep the nine. The
Hmm.
nine's going to get me where I want it to go.
Right. Oh, what a tough decision, but you're so right.
It is tough. And I've seen where I've been lucky a few times when I've said to this individual, look, you're just don't, you're not fitting in. It's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person said, yeah, you're right. I'm miserable. Oh, we're both miserable? Great conversation. See you later. Have a great life.
Mm.
You might
Ah.
be surprised because
Mhm.
if they're if they're having that, they might just they might just be as miserable as you are. So
Mhm.
have the conversation and say, I don't see how this is working.
Those courageous conversations. I was just speaking with another um, business owner who lives by the motto, tell the truth faster. And I think that so many of us get kind of hung up on, do I need to follow a 30-day or a 90-day guideline, or am I okay with having this conversation? Is this, going to be, am I opening myself to any kind of liability here by having this conversation?
Well, yes, those are possibilities. Um, but I think if you're honest with the individual, you
Hmm.
know, what you said is absolutely true. Ray Dalio, another kind of big hero of mine, radical transparency and radical honesty is
Oh.
really the only way to deal with it. Um, and if you've hired that person that's going to fire you or sue you back, then you do actually need to follow good practice in saying, this is why we're doing this, follow the procedures. Um,
Mm.
and and there are things that you do need to do legally, but um, all of them that I've had that conversation with, um, we gave them a separation and we said, it's just as much our fault as yours. So here's a separation. We're not going to fight your unemployment and move on. So if the company is trying to say, well, I'm going to save everything, I'm going to try and get everything back for, that this person cost me,
Hmm.
then that's not going to work either.
Hmm. So you just got to move forward. It's just always forward motion.
It's always forward motion. Yeah. And there's so many statesmen have said that, if you're not moving forward, you're dying. So
Hmm.
it's always moving forward, trying to get something accomplished. Uh,
Hmm.
and you're going to have some rocks in the way. You're going to have some boulders in the way. Uh,
Yeah. Mm.
So you have to deal with them. And the other, kind of referring back to the decision making chapter, is that
Mhm.
sometimes we focus so much on the problem
Mm,
that we don't want to look away. Um,
mm,
and as a motorcycle rider, one of the things that you're taught, your first lessons are, don't look at where you're going, look where you want to go. So, and I've experienced that. When I'm on the street and I see that curb, and if I focus on the curb, I'm going to hit the curb. If I
mhm,
focus on making that right hand turn, I make the right hand turn.
mhm.
So, we do tend to dwell on some of the problems so intensely that um, we have a hard time making that decision. And there's room on either side of the path to try and make that happen.
Oh, what a great way to look at it. I love that. And that kind of plays right into your the next chapter that I wanted to touch on about your four levels of owner thinking from worker to leader.
Yeah.
Um, so for yourself, you said that you were pretty successful right out of high school. So did you find yourself having to go through these transitions? I would imagine as a young guy out of high school, you had to start probably as a worker, or maybe you're just brilliant enough that you landed that top dog position right away. But I mean, so for you personally, how does that all play out, and what kind of advice or what did you learn along that way, along that path?
Well, so to talk about the four levels are, um, worker level, manager level, developer level, and leader level. So those are the four levels that I tend to think of when someone is working in the business. The the idea is when we start off with our own companies, um, we're so busy working, working, working. We're trying to get the sales. We're trying to do the invoicing. We're trying to hire people. We're going to get the reports out, to the government and to the accountants and all that kind of stuff. So we're always focused on the work that's at hand. The way to grow the business is to think about it as a leader. So you have to move above the worker level. So you go from worker level to manager level. Now I'm managing people instead of doing all the work. I've got some people, I've got some systems, I've got an assistant, a virtual assistant, whatever it might be, helping me do some of the things that I used to do on my own. When you start going into develop manager, now you're in a place where, okay, I've got my management stuff in place. Now I'm training others to do the work that I used to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the leader that or the developer works on bringing all of that together and bringing in people that are going to take over for that. The last level, the highest level, is the leader level thinking. And now you're thinking about, where is this business going? Where do I want it to end up? Um, the book ends with the chapter on exiting. Small business owners don't necessarily think well about how I'm going to finish
Mm-hmm.
off this business. So when you think as a leader in your business, you have an opportunity to think long-term horizon. Where is this going? And you're also at the point of saying, okay, I'm replacing myself. Um, I worked with one contractor in particular. He was it was a realization for him that if he was going to grow the business, that he couldn't be a crew chief anymore. He
Oh.
had to replace himself.
Mhm.
So with that realization, okay, now that you understood the fact that you need to replace yourself, how are you going to go about doing that? How are you going to start letting go, letting other people do the work that needs to get done so that you're not doing it all the time? A lot of trust that you have to build with your staff, your employees, your family. But when we kind of recapping, when we start off in business, we're always in this worker level mentality,
Mhm.
but we need to move up to the leader level mentality. And so it becomes when you start out, the pyramid is very large at the base on the worker level and very small at the high end on the leader level. When you are more successful, the pyramid should be inverted, where the leader level thinking is taking most of your time and working should be the least amount of time. There's been articles written, Harvard Business Review, for years and years and years that talks about the the level of strategic thinking in corporations. When you move up the ladder, you become you must start thinking more strategically, long term, bigger picture. Uh, and your day is, it sounds kind of funny, but your day is thinking. Your day is thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this happen? Instead of the doing. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. I hope it.
Yeah, it does. It does. And while you were talking about the different levels, I was thinking about my own corporate path, not unsimilar to exactly what you described. Um, and I don't really recall any, one step being harder than the others. I just know that um, reaching leadership, it is, you are setting the tone, but it's also like um spending more time in the planning stages and in the sourcing stage. And but I'll tell you what, as an entrepreneur, finding a successor or finding someone to cover me, I don't know. I don't know if that's in my MO. I mean, I don't know that any of, I mean, I know I certainly don't know that I'll ever be able to stop. But
Well,
I
yeah,
probably should at least think
it,
about it.
it obviously depends on the business and what kinds of things that you're doing,
Hmm.
but it's kind of thinking with the end goal in mind sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I've started this career. Where is it going to take me? What do I
yeah.
want to get out of this career? Uh,
Right.
and it doesn't necessarily mean, I am going to be selling my business to a conglomerate and, they're going to buy me
Hmm.
out for several million dollars. Could happen, but are you happy along the way? Are you
Hmm.
fulfilling the vision that you wanted for the business? And sometimes that vision takes a little working in the process, um,
Hmm.
just to get that refined a little bit more. You have an initial vision, and you say, okay, well, I've made some adjustments. I've learned a little bit about this, and now I'm going to move in this direction.
Okay.
Decision making, clarity, leadership. It all kind of it's there, and tying it back, and it's never taught like that in business school.
Mm.
Decision making is, where's this formula? What's the stats say?
Mm.
Give me the correlation value of doing this, that, or the other thing. Those are really great if you can actually figure out, you've got a series of incidents that you can put into a formula and say, okay, this is the right direction that we're going to be going in.
Hmm.
Um, doesn't work that way. Uh,
Mm.
I have been on so many new product projects. Um,
Mm.
some of them are, absolutely brand new, meaning our company never did it before. There's a lot of guesses in what that can be, and to make that decision um, becomes less about the formulas than about the plans that you have for success. If you have an existing product, say, and you're making modifications to it, now you've got some history that you can go back to and say, okay, we've sold this many units, we've got these features, and we're moving ahead. Yeah, we can invest $100,000 into making this the next the next product. Um, but again, in business school, they're giving you all the examples of, okay, here's the sales for the last 10 years. Project out what that's going to be and make the decision. Uh, okay. I'm just going to push the button on my spreadsheet calculator and it's going to come up with a number. So
Right.
it's a difficult thing, but again, it's not how we're teaching in school, um, and it's just that kind of thing that I feel small business owners uh, they could benefit themselves from getting an MBA,
Hmm.
but a lot of the tradespeople, if they've gone to a community college, they only have an associate's degree anyways, which means you have to go to 2 more years of college to be able to attend a master's program.
Mm-hmm.
So continuous learning is the value that we get and
Hmm.
retain and use for all of our things in the future. So
Hmm.
that's why, kind of bringing it back to the book and why the book is um, I want people to understand that you don't necessarily need to go to school. You
Hmm.
can. It's great. I've done it. I have family members who are doctorates, uh, great, magnificent people. They're leaders in their respective fields. But I also have my family members, my father and both grandfathers, who were they started their own businesses with their own 2 hands, and they wrestled and made it happen, and they were successful.
Hmm.
No school at all. So
Yeah.
there's a balance there, and I appreciate both sides of it. Um, but I always know that if I'm stuck, I'll spend some time learning something, and that'll.
I like that. And to your point of, as the overwhelmed small business owner, just the mere idea of finding a successor. So would you say then that gaining that clarity of where you want to see yourself, and I think it's okay to look out 5, 10, even 20 years. You don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be right now. And then maybe if what they're deciding they want in that 10, 15, 20 year time frame, maybe they will need to go back to school to
Yes.
get further education to actually reach that ultimate end game. But first they got to get clear. And
Yeah.
if they're a plumber and they want to plumb until the day they retire, then that's okay too. I mean, it's all about what they want to do. They just need to hire an apprentice then who follows them.
Right. There is one story in the book about a fellow I've named John, and he uh, actually grew a highly successful business. He was an asphalt contractor. Um, he happened to be in a town that really was booming, and his business went absolutely ballistic. At the same time, he was miserable as hell.
Mm.
So he, his wife were in the business. They couldn't spend time with their kids. And so he decided that he was going to hire a president and a human resource manager and an accountant. And he was going to go back to being the crew member
Oh.
and a crew leader. So you don't have to be, the CEO,
Mm.
of everything. Uh,
Hmm.
so understanding what your strengths are, what you would like to do, he runs essentially a very successful business without all of the other stuff. He has the
Hmm.
president and all those other people reporting to him on a regular basis on how his business is doing, but he's letting them make the decisions on moving the business forward.
That's incredible. I
Yeah,
love
it's
that.
an unusual perspective.
Hmm. Well, it's just how, I mean, absolutely courageous to be able to just to let go of all that they built because they recognize that this wasn't really where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
I would imagine that was probably not a real easy decision. It might have taken some time.
Oh yeah, and it is. It's one of those things where we learn from failure. Uh,
Mm.
you find out that it happened with this particular individual, but happens with others as well. You're growing your business. You've got a young family. Um, do you want to be out there, on the rooting them on at Little League or softball or
Mhm.
volleyball or whatever it is they might want to do. Or you want to be able to have that chance. Um, there's
Yeah.
more to life than just piling up money.
Really?
I know it's kind of a contrary thing, especially in today's day and age, but it's uh, it's a purposeful business then. I,
Mhm.
and I, I don't really talk much about that, but a purposeful business. Are you purposeful in what you're doing? Are you fulfilling it for yourself, for others, maybe for your family? Um, having a purposeful business.
Hmm. Well, that causes me to think about yourself and your journey. And you just mentioned that you like to fall back on continuous learning and growth. Do you have some favorite places of inspiration or some go-tos that you like to lean on most?
I read a lot. I,
Yeah.
reading is one of the biggest things you can get. Um, Obviously, takes a lot of time,
Mm.
um, but certainly getting a book and getting the audio version of it, listen to it on the way to work, to the job site, things like that. Those are always really, really helpful. But having the book to me, I'm also a physical kind of guy. I'm not necessarily electronic.
Mm.
Books are kind of they're good, but I want to underline, I want to highlight, I want to dog ear the pages and things like that. And it's still kind of difficult to do that electronically. So getting the book, getting the audio book to accompany that and work through that.
Hmm.
Um, there are lots of classes that can be taken online. Udemy's probably one of the big ones right now. There's LinkedIn Learning. Um, take a course. You can do that in a short period of time. Um, and if all else fails, go to YouTube. YouTube
Mm.
is an amazing resource. Um, one of the things that when we talk about business failures, YouTube originally started off as a video dating service and didn't work.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So repurposed and turned into something else that um, after Google, the biggest search engine is YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Do you
uh,
have a couple of favorite books?
well, I I'm a big John Maxwell fan. So the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership is certainly right up at the top. I read that maybe 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Now I've gone through it a few times, and I have most of John Maxwell's books. I'm also a big fan of Peter Drucker.
Huh.
Peter Drucker's Essential Management. Um, Peter Drucker isn't really thought about much lately because he was very big in the um, early part of the 20th century. But his notions of management versus leadership were essential learning back in the day. Uh, there's also a book called Range by David Epstein, whereby I learned about Frances Hesselbein. Frances Hesselbein was the CEO of the Girl Scouts, and she reinvented how the Girl Scouts portrayed themselves, did their books, their merit badges, their sales. She transformed um, how the Girl Scouts operated for years. Um, Peter Drucker, after meeting Frances Hesselbein, said that she should be the next CEO for General Motors. That's how
Oh,
much Peter Drucker thought of Frances Hesselbein. Uh,
wow.
so Frances Hesselbein has a book on leadership, great stuff. Um, I also look back to a book um, called The Art of the Long View. It was popular in the 70s, maybe 80s. I think in the 80s. Um, it was written by someone who was the development manager for Royal Dutch Shell. And his job was to look 100 years into the future
Oh.
of what the oil business was going to be like. So obviously, 100 years is a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put it out there so far, then you get a different perspective of, well, I don't have to make this decision today because I need to
Mm-hmm.
think about how it's going to affect the long-term future of where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very powerful book for me years ago, and just thinking
Wow.
about um, where things, how you think about today versus
Mhm.
where how you might think about it if you have 100-year perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a concept. Could spend some time pondering that for sure. Well, all right. We're coming to the close here pretty quick, but first, finally, um, I was really curious if you met a new business owner or entrepreneur who was struggling and in crisis mode, which chapter of your book would you point them to first?
It would be chapter 2 on vision, because one of the things that I do with uh, coaching clients is, um, because they are generally smaller businesses and they haven't really had a time to think about it, is to um, think about vision. And the simplest way to do that is I hand them a sheet with about 100 different values.
Hmm.
And so out of those 100 values, then you can add more, or you can find lists anywhere online about core values. Um, and I give them instructions to say, pick 5, and you might want to pick some more, but do not go more than 7,
Hmm.
because what I want you to do is write a sentence of what that core value means to you in your business and your life. Once they've completed that, and it has to be on paper, you just can't think, oh, well, yeah, this is kind of what I think about. No,
Mm-hmm.
put it down on a paper, write it down on a computer, whatever it is. It needs to be written out, because then the next step is, okay, what are the next big challenges what's the big challenges you have for the next 3 to 6 months? And
Mm-hmm.
given that you now have articulated your values, how will you solve these problems?
Mm.
And it's a huge mind shift in thinking about how to approach problems. Had one business owner who talked about the fact that his father, who owned a business, they used to spend a lot of time volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that when he saw this list of values, that um, he wanted, he's missing the volunteer aspect of that. So he, in partly in helping to build the culture of his organization as well, built in time to say, okay, well, we're going to volunteer at Special Olympics. We're going to do these kinds of things. Doesn't cost any money. It's time, availability. Um, but it was something that he realized he was missing. And um, by articulating that, he could then incorporate that into his business, and really brought his employees together.
Mm. Yeah. Looking at your challenges through the lens of your values brings a much deeper
Absolutely.
meaning to the work that you're doing, most definitely. Well,
And once
Frank,
you
thank
have those
you.
values, decision making is a whole lot easier.
Hmm. This has been such a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time. So
Oh,
insightful,
thank
such
you, Kristen.
wisdom.
I
Tell us
appreciate that.
now,
I appreciate it.
Where
And
can we
best of
find
luck
you?
for
Oh,
your
well,
work.
thanks. Thank you. Where can we find you, though? I'm sure everyone's going to want to seek you out and hear more, much, much more, and find your book. Tell us about your book. When will it be released? Where can we find it?
My website is pretty simple, frankspevak.com, FrankSpevak.com. The book, I'm working on some final edits right now. I hope to be finished with that in September and then publish in October. Uh,
Beautiful.
and I think that it's going to be, I'm working on some endorsements with some people that I've worked with over the years. So I'm trying to get a little bit more buzz, the community at large and things like that. It'll be hopefully available sometime in October.
Fantastic. And all of your words of wisdom we can find at frankspevak.com as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Do you happen to have any other exciting events or anything else coming up that we can promote for you?
Um, Not at the moment. This has been one of my um, one of the things that I've really wanted to do. And so I've been concentrating on that mostly. So once I've got that all squared away, then I hope that with the help of you and others, get out and show my book and get involved with some audiences and things like that. So I appreciate that.
Oh, awesome. Always welcome. Always more than welcome. We love you, Frank. You do incredible things in our community too. We didn't touch on that at all, but I'd like our audience to know that Frank spends an incredible amount of time out in the community, volunteering his time and supporting local organizations that do great things right here in our hometowns. So that's wonderful too. Frank is a stand-up guy and he deserves much kudos and support. So I want to make sure everybody looks you up. Again, Frank, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of the Savvy Leader Podcast. We were so glad to have you. Be sure to check out the SavvyLeadersLounge.com for further inspiration and resources to help you be the savvy leader you are always meant to be. See you next time.